Welcome to the OLV Daily Reflection for Thursday, October 15th. Today, the Universal Church celebrates Saint Teresa of Jesus, or Saint Teresa of Avila. She was born on March 28, 1515, in the country of Spain. And at the age of 20, she decided to become a religious sister with the Carmelites in the town of Avila. Her story has many twists and turns, but a couple things can be said about her life. Saint Teresa was given special experiences in prayer that allowed her to receive not only grace, but important insights that guided her throughout her life. Saint Teresa became a source of reform among the Carmelites. And as a result of these efforts of reform, she established new Carmelite communities. But most importantly, she wrote about her experiences in prayer. And she wrote down the insights that she gained about the spiritual life. So she is an author of several spiritual classics, and people continue to read these works today to gain insights into how God is working in their life. Therefore, she is remembered as one of the great mystics and women religious of the Catholic Church. St. Teresa was even elevated to being a doctor of the Church in 1970 by St. Paul VI, and she was the first woman to receive this honor. The Gospel passage chosen for today in honor of this great saint comes to us from the 15th chapter of St. John's Gospel. It reads, Jesus said to his disciples, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes away every branch in me that does not bear fruit. And every one that does, he prunes, so it bears more fruit. You are already pruned because of the word I spoke to you. Remain in me as I remain in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit on its own unless it remains on the vine, so neither can you unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing. Anyone who does not remain in me will be thrown out like a branch and wither. People will gather them and throw them into a fire, and they will be burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask for whatever you want and it will be done for you. By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. There's much more I could share about St. Teresa in light of this gospel passage, but I believe I said enough to make it clear that she drew her faith, strength, courage, and love from Christ. She remained deeply rooted in Jesus Christ throughout her life, and as a result, she bore much fruit. And we too are called to bear much fruit in our lives by remaining centered in Jesus Christ. But these words of Christ that we heard today also present some challenges. And I think we need to talk about them just a little bit. First and foremost, what does Jesus mean when he says that God does pruning on people? For those who may be unfamiliar with this agricultural practice, pruning is done to plants, especially vines, so the plants will grow more produce. If pruning is done correctly, it has no negative effect on the plant. In fact, it can increase its yield. So when we apply this concept to our lives, we have to acknowledge that God can work through the events of our lives to bring about greater insights, greater knowledge. But the challenge is that some of the events of our lives may be difficult and hard, frustrating. So pruning within our spiritual lives means that we have to learn where God is calling us to serve him and serve others in this world. And sometimes this process is hard. It's not easy. And furthermore, he wants us to produce more fruit for the kingdom. So again, we just have to be open to this reality in our lives. Now, what happens when we're separated from the vine? And all of us know about this reality. When a branch is broken off from a tree, when a branch is broken off from a vine, it dies. So what happens when we separate ourselves from Christ? Well, this means that we've committed a sin where we have rejected his love and mercy. And we have to remember, brothers and sisters, that God does not force us to love him. We have to choose to love. So the grave sins, the mortal sins that are committed voluntarily, these are times where people are purposely separating themselves from God's love by these grave sinful acts. And as a result, God's grace can't flow through their lives in the way it did prior. In fact, the church tells us that when we've committed a mortal sin, we've lost sanctifying grace. We no longer have God's life and love working within us. Now, praise be God, we have the sacrament of reconciliation available to us so that we can reattach ourselves to the vine. That by God's mercy, he wants us to be brought back into life and love and receive grace upon grace flowing from him. But we always have to remember that we have a choice. We can allow ourselves to be pruned so that we become more fruitful disciples of Jesus Christ. But also we have the ability to separate ourselves from Jesus Christ by our sinfulness. And we have a great example in St. Teresa, who gave so much to the church as a result of her relationship with Jesus Christ. And her and the other saints truly inspire us so that we too can be that fruitful. But also, again, if we are struggling, we have to remember that we just do not want to ever be to the point where we are cut off from the vine, where we are rejecting Christ's love and mercy. But even then, brothers and sisters, there's always hope. Saint Teresa of Avila, Our Lady of Victory, pray for us.